The White Sox losing is now officially historic. Let's discuss how bad it got last night and just how historically bad this team is next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at southsideshowdown.com. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Smash the like button. Also follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, leave a 5-star review. And the White Sox officially set the franchise mark for the longest losing streak in the team's 124-year history, losing 14 games in a row after getting crushed 14-2 last night by the Boston Red Sox. Been a while since we have said that the Sox were completely non-competitive in a game, but that is what happened. And I'll discuss just how bad that game was, plus where do the Sox stack up right now with fellow historically bad teams? Then John Heyman reports there's a good chance Luis Robert Jr. will be traded by the deadline. Earlier this week, I discussed Jeff Passan's report on LRJ possibly being traded, and I want to talk about the reasons it might make sense to move Luis now. And finally, Martin Maldonado, an all-star. I want to talk about the movement going on Sox social media to get him into the all-star game. But this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Well, the White Sox were out hit last night 24-4. Sox sent 5 pitchers to the mound, and only Danny Mendick did not give up a run. That's how bad it was. The Sox had to send a position player out to pitch the 9th inning, and Danny Mendick did not give up a run. I do take back what I said about seeing if Jake Woodford could be salvaged as a starter, because he gave up 7 earned runs on 10 hits, 2 homers, walked 3, and struck out 3 in 4 innings of work. Tim Hill, he gave up 4 runs and 6 hits in 1 1/3 innings of work. Jared Suster, 2 runs and 3 hits in an inning and a third. And Justin Anderson, still on this team, 1 1/3 innings, gave up 1 run and 3 hits. And they are just abusing Justin Anderson. But hey, he's this bad, and if you're getting crushed, throw him out there to throw some more gasoline on the fire, I guess. In a nutshell, this was a loss that featured every single problem the Sox have had. A poor offense that was no hit through 5 innings. A poor defense, committed an error and just could not be where the ball was hit to. Bad pitching outside of Eric Fetty, Garrett Crochet, and sometimes Chris Flexen, because those are about the 3 most reliable arms you have. The bullpen is terrible. And oh yeah, Pedro Grifol, still the manager. And there's no indication he will be gone during this series. Although he must have been disappointed that this was not a 1-run game. Because yes, during the pregame presser, he said he enjoys 1-run games. And Ozzie Guillen's reaction is priceless in the pregame. It's on X, formerly Twitter, at White Sox Talk. It's amazing. I guess Pedro likes having ulcers, maybe? I don't know, because, yeah, Ozzie mentioned, like, there's no way Bruce Bochy, Jim Leland, Dusty Baker, those guys would have loved to have been in a stressful 1-run situation. The Sox broke the longest losing streak in franchise history in a single season, set back in 1924. And if you're wondering, that team finished 66, 87, and 1. They finished dead last. They were 25 and a half games out of first place with a minus 65 run differential. John Evers, he lasted 124 games before he was removed as manager. And that 1924 losing streak took place in August. And the team was 51-54 before it went on that skid. The Sox are 15-47 through 62 games. I mean, at least 1924, that one had to have hurt because there might have been some hope. There is no hope at all for this year's Chicago White Sox. Unless things change dramatically. The old adage of you're guaranteed to lose 60, guaranteed to win 60 is what you do with the other 42 games that matters will not apply to the Chicago White Sox. There's 120 games left in this brutal season. The Sox are halfway through this 39-game stretch of a brutal schedule, and they're 1-18 so far, folks. Strap on in. It's going to get worse. But what makes this losing streak, I would say, annoying, because we knew this team was going to be bad, but this is just downright annoying. Maybe sometimes frustrating, because I don't think anybody expected it to be this bad. Because as Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson of the Sox Machine podcast pointed out, this is historically bad. Like, no generation has experienced this. This team is off to the worst start in franchise history and just broke a losing streak that goes back to when the greatest generation was born. And I'll get to that even more when it comes to being generationally bad in just a second. But why is this annoying? Well, first, the Sox had 5 chances over the past 5 games prior to last night to win and blew them. So they're finding ways to lose, and no one is being held accountable. Pedro is still here. No one has been DFA'd out of the bullpen. Last night's lineup had no chance of winning. Another flaw being exposed. A manager who makes poor lineup decisions, or a front office is giving him bad data. And look, I'm all for Zach DeLoach and Duke Ellis getting some at-bats while they're up, but I'm not for it if it means both are in the lineup at the same time. Corey Julks and Oscar Colas need to be playing every day until Tommy Pham and Andrew Benintendi return from the IL. And even then, it'd be better to rotate Julks and Colas over Benny. I mean, you can play DeLoach or, keyword or, not and, or Ellis on the days you're putting Luis Robert Jr. at DH like they did last night, or giving him a day off like is scheduled, I believe, on Sunday. They're planning on giving, or Saturday, I think they're going to give Robert Jr. Some rest for maintenance. You got to handle him with kid gloves now. And every day is a new way to find bottom. You think it can't get any more historically worse? Well, the overall longest losing streak is 15 games. Through 1967 and 1968, the White Sox lost 15 games between those two seasons. In 1967, the Sox finished out losing 5 straight games, and then they started the season 0-10. That's according to NBC Sports Chicago. And the record for the longest losing streak in MLB history is 23, set by the 1961 Phillies. The 1961 Phillies, they finished 47-107-1, but they were 21-41 through game 62. And the most losses in a 162-game season is still in play, as the 2003 Tigers lost 119 games. They were 16-46 at this point in the season. The most losses in at least 160-game era, the modern era. The amazing Mets, they lost 120 games in 62. They were 17-45 after 62 games. So the Sox are 2 games behind the 62 Mets and a game behind the 2003 Tigers in terms of pace of reaching historic futility. I mean, again, as Nelson and Margolis pointed out on Sox Machine, this is generationally bad. No real generation can say right now, oh yeah, this was way worse. Want to know how? Just look at the numbers. The least amount of wins ever in team history was set in 1932 with 49 wins. That 1932 team won 49 games. But they were 23-39 through 62 games, and that is when they played 152 games. The 1970 White Sox were the worst team in a 162-game schedule. They finished 56-106. Even that team was 23-39 through 62 games and didn't set a franchise mark for consecutive losses. And just imagine how worse it's going to be once the Sox trade Luis Robert Jr., Garrett Crochet, and Eric Fetty. And speaking of Robert Jr. possibly being traded, New York Post and Odyssey Radio insider John Heyman has Luis's chances of being traded as good. Let's discuss maybe why the Sox should trade their best player next on Locked On White Sox. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start just at $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. And it is one reason I have a policy since I'm a parent. But man, I wish I had known about Policygenius when I shop for coverage. I'm still getting annoying sales calls and letters from agents still trying to get my business. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. That means no one is trying to slide into your LinkedIn DMs hoping to sell you a policy. I know I'm still getting that. You just get outstanding service with award-winning agents that can walk you through the process step by step. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox host the Boston Red Sox for Game 2 of a 4-game set. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Again, lots of great White Sox podcasts out there. I just mentioned SoxMachine.com or Sox Machine podcast on the in the previous segment. I just hope I'm the first one you take in. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Smash that like button. Also follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. So John Heyman went over 10 star players, or at least I would say some of the players on his list are just having good seasons. They're not stars. But he went over 10 players that have the chances of being traded by the deadline. And number one on his list is Luis Robert Jr. This is what he had in his write-up. Little quick graph. The White Sox are actively seeking packages for Robert, and with 2 team options at a club-friendly $20 million and just $63 million to go through 2027, assuming the options are exercised, he combines control and talent like no one else out there. Worry over injury history is the negative herd, but many need outfielders, Dodgers, Phillies, Royals, etc. Chances to be dealt, good. And when he ranks good, that means over 50%. And now I agree that there should be no sacred cows, as ESPN insider Jeff Passan wrote the other day, and I shared that, I believe, on Wednesday's show. And I even said on Wednesday's show, honestly, the only player that should be just as close to untouchable currently on this roster is Corey Lee, and that's only just from like a value standpoint in terms of he's under team control for a while, and he's showing he can hit. And he plays catcher, so you could have him at catcher, and if Edgar Cuero turns out to be the real deal Holyfield, you could have Corey Lee DH. But even then, if a team gives you a good offer for Corey Lee, make the deal. Although try to get more than just Jake Eater. Yes, I miss Jake Berger, even though he's not hitting well in Miami. At least he hits home runs. Now, I'm still in the camp of keeping Robert Jr., but part of it is for selfish reasons. As this team is so bad, and you and I need someone to watch, and Luis Robert Jr. is still a box office draw. I still want to see him play. He hits the ball a country mile when he gets a hold of it. Can run the bases when he's not pulling his muscles. And he's an amazing fielder. And plus, if he does stay healthy the rest of the year and has a good season, heck, even puts up the same numbers that he did last year, I think you can get closer to full value as possible in the offseason. Maybe that's more of my stance. I mean, I would prefer to keep Luis Robert Jr. through the rest of his contract. I would prefer to even maybe try to work on an extension even more, keep him through the decade. But I get the risks. And I do see the point in trading him now for these reasons. First, as Heyman said, he still has value on the market. And let's say the Dodgers want him. And could you imagine him on the Dodgers? Oh boy. That team, it would be definitely giving itself the best chances possible with what they have of winning the World Series. But they have the 8th best farm system to shop from, and we're already benefiting from it. Jordan Leisure has been one of the few bright spots out of the bullpen. Nick Nastrini, if he can figure out, the command, he's got the chance to be a very good starter. And the Sox got him in the Lance Lynn deal. Although the Phillies and the Royals, their farm systems are at the bottom 10. But let's say the Rangers want them. Top 7 system. Never count out a team like the Yankees chasing bats. Number 11 system. Maybe the Padres make a run. But you can target shop them for the positional prospects you want. And again, as I said on the previous show, the Sox are kind of looking for positional players with high upside at the AA or AAA level. And he's one of the few guys where, yes, a team is going to say, hey, he's usually hurt. And Chris Getz hopefully is on the phone saying, well, he had a full season last year, very productive, still very talented. Maybe I'll take one of your top positional prospects, and maybe a team might say, you know what? Yeah, he's going to get us over the hump. He's got the talent as long as he stays healthy. And then speaking of health, though, you get one of your injury-prone, shaky pillars off your team. I mean, now Luis Robert Jr. is a pillar of the team, but again, he's usually hurt. Last year was the first time he played over 100 games. And a big reason this franchise has collapsed is the core of Robert, Yohan Moncada, and Eloy Jimenez. They're always hurt. So get them off the roster. You have outs in the offseason with Moncada and Eloy. Might as well just start fresh and clean house of the Rick Hahn era. Also, you're going to clear more salary off the books. And that leaves more money to play with in free agency. And I am intrigued to see if Getz can wisely spend in free agency. Yes, he put together this terrible team. But let's be fair. Even he admitted, and a lot of insiders have admitted, the word on the street was the Sox were toxic in free agency. No one worth of value really wanted to come here. That's why you ended up with guys like Nicky Lopez and Paul DeJong. And while they're not great players, they've been solid. Paul DeJong's leading the team in home runs. And he is what he is. Decent fielding shortstop with some pop in his bat. Nicky Lopez, he's going to hit for contact. But maybe after using this year to at least improve the clubhouse culture, he can actually go shopping in the premium bin instead of the salvage bin. Now, I know you guys are going to put a comment in there saying, well, Jerry's not going to spend the money. Well, if you get rid of Robert Jr., you technically only have one guaranteed contract on the books next season, and that's Andrew Benintendi. So you're going to have to add players. Because technically, I could say Brian Ramos and Colson Montgomery, maybe Jacob Gonzalez will be your infield next year. Maybe, but you might want to give Jacob Gonzalez some at-bats at AAA. And you have Vaughn and Benintendi. That means you still need a center fielder. You're still going to need a right fielder. You're still going to need a pitching staff. You're going to have to spend some money. And I do dream of a world where Getz goes to Jerry Reinsdorf and says, you want a new stadium? You're starting a new network? Give me the money to make the investment in Juan Soto. Let's outbid the field. That's a generational talent. You were willing to do it with Manny Machado, although you weren't willing to go all in. Let's go all in on this guy. It's a dream. Guy can dream. Also, it's a clear signal that Getz wants to do a full-on rebuild and maybe smarter than the last rebuild. Get guys closer to the big leagues to minimize the developmental timeline. Hey, the Brewers did that a past decade ago, and I know I should put money in the jar for mentioning the Brewers, but they did the same thing in their rebuild, and they got things turned around pretty quickly. But you get guys who can play defense and also hit for power. Maybe get some guys that are patient at the plate, because Robert Jr., he's a free swinger at the plate. And yeah, the Sox chances of being competitive by the time his deal runs out, not that great. So why waste him like you did Jose Abreu? And finally, look at what the Bears and the Blackhawks did when they ripped everything down completely to the studs. I mean, everything. They went scorched earth. Now there's hope. Now, granted, they got some luck in getting the number 1 overall pick, and the White Sox will not be able to get the number 1 overall pick due to the new rules. That's again why being historically bad is not worth it, because the Sox will pick as high as, or the best the Sox can pick next year is number 10. But at least when you rip everything down, you do give it yourself a chance for hope. All right. Well, there's a movement that, while I don't like the subject of it, I'm on board with the movement. And I'll discuss next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. There's always action on PrizePicks, and this is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball is winding down. Make sure to try out esports this month, because every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup doesn't win, you'll get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and more. And if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays, like today. Are you feeling confident in your selections? Go with the power play, meaning if every pick wins, you win a higher payout. Want to play it safe? The flex play still gives you a payout if you, say, do a 6-player choice and 1 misses. Minimum entry is just $5. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. And the White Sox host the Boston Red Sox for Game 2 of a 4-game set. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central tonight. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Well, welcome back into Locked On White Sox. Again, I'm your host, Todd Welter. Thank you for sticking with me this far through the show. Shout out to all my everydayers out there. Love you guys, just like I love White Sox social media world, especially on X, formerly Twitter. Yeah, I'm still there, and there's still a lot of us there. Civil wars pop up every now and again, but they haven't been as costly as some people think. Although it's coming. I have a feeling it's going to be coming. Whether it's Crochet's been traded or Luis Robert Jr. has been traded. But there is a movement on Sox social media world to get Martin Maldonado into the All-Star game. I'm trying to track down who started this, and I've gotten a few different origins. And I wanted to track down whoever started this. I wanted to get them on the show, but I don't know if I can put whoever started it on, because it's really hard to verify. I've gotten like 4 or 5 different handles. I've messaged them because I usually, we follow each other. So it's good. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to put somebody on because I can't nail down who's done it. There's a couple people taking credit, but the movement I agree with, even though I don't like Martin Maldonado. The movement is to write in catcher Martin Maldonado. That's right. Hashtag vote Maldi. Love it. Maldonado has a slash line of 076, 124, 120. So why put the worst hitter in baseball into the All-Star game? Well, to show how ridiculous the fan vote can be. Now, I'm not against the fan vote for the All-Star game, but it's an exhibition because it is. It's an exhibition meant for the fans. But I'm not a fan of the standards who is eligible even for write-in. I'm not even a fan of write-in. I'll admit I'm old school when, first of all, I'm old school that you had to go to the games to vote. And you had to punch it in. And I used to vote for every White Sox player as a kid. But now looking back, I voted for some players that probably didn't even deserve it. And that's why, there needs to be standards, especially in the internet age, of who can stay on the ballot. Because again, this is not voting for somebody for office. So if you're like, how dare you suggest this? It's an exhibition game. And yes, I wrote in Maldi, but there were some players on the ballots I was like, how? Tim Anderson is terrible this season for the Marlins, and he's on the ballot. Players should have certain numbers that they need to reach for fan consideration. And yes, get rid of the write-in option. Like I said, this isn't voting for public office. You need to have a certain set of standards, whether how many home runs you've hit, average, slash line, WAR, I don't care. And yes, if a player falls below it, they're off the ballot. Make the voting a living, breathing thing. And again, when you vote for somebody for the All-Star game, you're not voting them in as your alderman. So you can make changes. And also, most of these players, if they fell off the ballot, wouldn't care, because if you vote somebody in, you're basically taking a vacation away from them. Usually the only people that want to be there are the guys who have a first-time All-Star appearance, or maybe there's a nice incentive for them to make it. But otherwise, a lot of these players would just rather be with their families. They would rather have the 4 days off. You're taking a vacation away from them. And also what I love about it is this has been done before. There was a push to get John Scott into the NHL All-Star game, and it succeeded. And it was meant to show just how ridiculous the selection process can be. Someone can be considered a all-star if you just vote them in. And how many times have players gotten voted in based on just name recognition, even though they're years past their primes? Honestly, what it should be is the final tally for the starters should be 25% of the fan base, of the fan vote, 25% of the player vote. The player should be able to vote. 25% of the coaches and the GM should be able to vote, and 25% of the beat reporters and the announcers. And then when it comes to the reserves, take the fans out. And why do you say, well, beat reporters and announcers? Well, a lot of them are watching the games every day. And that way you get a more accurate selection of truly a good player and who's a starter. And that way, too, you make this less a popularity contest, and again, more of a way to recognize good play. And even then, we've got stats for that. It's called F4. And for hitters, it's called WRC+. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Before I go, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV, on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And I will be back on Monday to discuss the good and the bad of the rest of the series with Boston. Plus, it'll be Monday, so I'll have a Minor League Monday report. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at Locked On White Sox. Smash that like button and give a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. And also feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding the Sox being generationally bad after getting pummeled by Boston, Luis Robert Jr. needing to be traded, and vote Martin Maldonado into the All-Star game. You can leave those comments on X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you Monday.